Oh my God, what have they done? Well, that is a good question, and it all depends on where you're coming from. You could be from the government or from industry or the all-important member of the public. I'm Garnet Murrow, and I'm going to share with you a few of my thoughts and my perspective on the July 29th, 2016 Forest Appeals Commission regarding Interfor and whether or not they met the visual quality objective of partial retention. All right, well, a logical spot to start is the Forest Appeals Commission. What is the Forest Appeals Commission? Well, the Forest Appeals Commission is an independent tribunal originally established under the Forest Practices Code of British Columbia Act, the Code, and continued under the Forest and Range Practices Act. The Commission hears appeals from certain decisions made by government officials related to forests and the environment. And today's discussion is going to be around the decision from July 29th, 2016 regarding Interfor and the Province of British Columbia and the Forest Practices Board as the third party. The crux of the matter is, did Interfor meet the partial retention VQO on the south side of Stewart Island? This is on a coastal example there. Oh, and of course, look what happens if you cut too many trees down. All kidding aside, this is a serious matter, and I do want to sort of jump into some of it. I've read this document here. This is the actual full appeal here. And quite a few things jumped out at me. I've been involved with visual resource management pretty much my entire career. And I guess as discussion points, I'll just bring them to light here. Point number 18 in here talks about the use of percent alteration. Now, under the code, this was a very significant part of learning how to do visual impact assessments, and a lot of that was really the driver on things. Now, personally, I've got experience where I've altered 100% of a landscape and still met partial retention. So I've never really personally put a lot of weight behind the importance of percentage and percent alteration. And with the advent of the FERPA and professional reliance, it was a real sign to me that we were moving away from the percent alteration calculations. However, here in this determination is very clearly stated that the use of percent alterations and the calculations behind those are a key component to determining whether or not you've met a VQO. So again, a little bit of a barometer check for me, and I'd be interested in what your experience is on that. Moving along, section 65, how you define a landform. This is very important, and I think that's part of the discussion we'll have in the room together is, what is a landform versus a landscape? Very, very key difference between the two. Section 81, did they meet the VQO? This is where they're asking the question, all right? So, and part of the defense was due diligence from the appellant. So part of their defense was, significant viewpoints. So let's have that conversation. What is a significant viewpoint? Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. And I feel for everybody on all sides involved in this case, because you start talking about things like easy and very easy and small to medium scale, very large. These are clearly subjective terms. And, it reminds me a lot like ice skating, or ice dancing, figure skating basically, and very, very subjective to who the winner is. And in this case, with our forced practices, very, very subjective as to what's easy and very easy. So I think there's some room there for some more definition around what things are. Again, let's have more conversation in the room as a group and sort of get on the same page as far as what people are thinking there. Borrowing from natural character in the landscape, section 182, really key point. Again, this is something that I really do believe in, and it's very critical that in your operations that you do borrow from natural landscapes. And let's have a conversation and talk about what that means in your particular area. Partial retention is not rectilinear and geometric, so this is something that's very fundamental. And that does show up in the FERPA definitions of what partial retention is. And so, again, in Section 189, that was one of the tests in this case. And in Section 208, the part of the due diligence defense was really contravened in a sense. I don't know if that's the right word, but anyway, they ignored their expert's opinion, and I think that didn't really work well for Interfor in this case. So at the end of the day, Interfor was found guilty, if you will, and was fined $20,000. And I think I want to leave the last word to a legal perspective here. Here's lawyer Jeff. I actually don't know how to say his last name here. Watanin. So in the recent BC Forest Professional magazine, he did write about this particular case, and it's right here. Okay, and so what I wanted to highlight was just his final paragraph there. So the fact that the VQO category descriptions in section 1.1 of FPPR are not tied to working definitions or some other broadly accepted industry standard means that when a dispute arises over the actual content of those descriptions, the FAC, Forest Appeals Commission, is left, in effect, to make something up as best it can after the fact. The problem, this is the real point here, the problem with this approach is that it tends to undermine a fundamental principle of the rule of law: advance knowledge of the law. Under the rule of law, persons subject to the law are entitled to know the content of the law before they act. Given that VQOs are defined in section 1.1 terms of apparently content-free adjectives and adverbs, persons required to meet those VQOs will have difficulty knowing in advance whether their plans will succeed. Even now, there's still a lot of controversy, in my opinion, over the ruling in this Forest Appeals Commission. Again, the rule of law states that a person subject to a law are entitled to know the content of the law before they act. That's the key part. So, with that in mind, I'm going to ask you to download the summary and the full determination from the Forest Appeals Commission. Read it, understand it, or do your best to understand it, and form some of your own opinions, and we'll have a very good conversation in the room. I'm Garnet Muro. Thank you for your time. Do your homework, download the document, read it, and I look forward to seeing you in the classroom.